Do we want the controls here or up there at the podium? Do you want to speak from your own?
Sit. I mean, we can do it right from there. I think that's better than the podium.
Okay, well, that's how I would be able to follow along.
I assume you're going to do the first 2 sections.
Whatever.
You do the first
You know, I just spent an hour setting up for you guys to get the podium.
Oh, we did the podium too.
Then we will be at the podium later. We're just so far away up there.
Oh, you want a podium?
They put you on a pedestal. Okay.
Going up to actual values.
So we are live.
So there seems to be about
In case you like to spread the word.
Where's Carl? There he is.
Carl, you're up.
What do you want me to spread?
Enter stage left.
So we are live on Zoom right now.
Can you put it countdown? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. So if you logged into YouTube on your device and searched for NWSOFA, you hit the NWSOFA page.
So everyone like normally got water and
Okay.
wow.
And that's how it works out.
Snap.
Is it on screen now?
Stream right now.
Take it.
Help yourself. Yeah.
Right now, all I have is the slide. But the moment someone
That was
says
the only thing? Okay. Yeah.
we are,
Can I ask this? Can I ask?
now again, it's no big deal. It'll be there.
Well, actually going back to Vulcan, my great grandfather and the grandfather of the 2 brothers, the main folks in the front company, all of that.
You sent me a link or anything?
Came over in 1881. They're older.
I don't think I can send you the link I'm using here.
Dodging the 10-year draft for the job.
One good reason. I'll just go to the
No, I know from story about.
Yes. So, they came over here, a lot of families.
Still, retesting, retesting, retesting.
Christie Martin,
I was on the board of those.
so is that Bill or Fred?
And it was a relationship, it was originally paid by former director, he had lived in Campbell, and original high school, not original, but Campbell for a while, where, so it was like, and they, we were mostly,
I'm not watching.
Oh,
I'm not watching.
oh, you found it?
now,
Okay.
And now you say, just take that, the URL and pick it out.
Here, let me,
Okay, so I go back doors. Yeah, if the heckling gets loud, we don't want to disturb anybody else.
Oh, we don't even have to get to the heckling before they tell me to shut the doors, so they're not hearing us out in the hall.
What would you do without Fred?
The over there when I'm going to take a pass on because we're going to
Stuff happens.
do that one. See how loud, if that's loud enough for you?
And this is,
Turn on.
yeah, it's on.
this is a test of the,
I'll just turn it a little louder.
okay, we'll make the microphone a little louder, all right. And this is, the Northwest Suburbs OFA, Fiscal and Economic Issues Group, July meeting. So if any of you are here to appeal your property taxes, that's next door.
they can do it, but it won't work.
Well, you know, I don't know if we have any expertise here or not. You know, what we're about, a lot of it is, understanding the facts, helping organize those facts to sharpen our arguments and communicate them to whoever your audience is that you deal with, whether that's in meetings, Bill's current events meeting, Facebook posts on New York Times articles, things like that. And so jobs, job growth recovered last month after, in May, we had only 75,000 jobs added. And prior months were reduced down by 75, so essentially we had zero net job growth in May. In June, we had 224,000 jobs added, so it bounced back. I don't know, as I said last month, I suspected May might have been an anomaly. I don't know if that was flooding in Nebraska or what caused, the May numbers to be low. But, they seem to be bouncing back, although, as we'll see, they're still not, for the 6 months, they're still below where they have been over the last few years. But, job recovery, we've got more jobs than ever before. That's a good thing.
How close are we to full employment? At some point, we gotta quit adding jobs, right? These are filled jobs or available jobs?
Now, these are jobs that are working, people are working.
Okay.
The question on full employment, on one hand, I will go back to Donald Trump's comment when he said we had 40% unemployment. Because what that was that 40% of the people over 16 were not, working. They did not have jobs. And that's the employment population ratio. Now, a lot of those are retirees, a lot of those are housewives, a lot of those are students, but there's still a large group of people that, if wages go up, if it gets easy enough to get a job, they will, come back into the workforce or come into the workforce. And so the question of what is full employment, no one really knows.
Go get a job for my pet turtle.
Hey, Carl,
Yeah.
can you move the water bottle? Thank you.
Sorry about that. So, job creation in the first 29 months under Trump, 5.6 million jobs, not too bad. Prior 29 months, 6.4 million jobs, or 800,000 more before Trump. So, while the unemployment rate is low, job growth under Trump is not particularly outstanding. It's not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not, it's not particularly outstanding. If you're just to point, if anybody isn't on my mailing list where you got a copy of this presentation, I'm happy to add you once we get a sheet to pass around. Which Sarah's putting together now, and we'll get your email and we'll send you a copy of the presentation. So average monthly job creation, a little higher under Obama. 6 month rolling average for the 6-year period from 2012 to 2018 was 206,000 jobs per month. For the first 6 months of this year, 172,000. So again, not an incredibly low number. Certainly, more than is necessary to absorb the people, entering the workforce, minus the retirees. But it's a lower number. The red line here was the January 2017 forecast, which indicated they thought that job growth was going to go down faster than it has. But they're still expecting job growth to go down below, in 2020 and 2021, 2022, and be, substantially lower. Which is one of the reasons, the whole question about full employment was one of the reasons why I was pretty confident when Trump got elected. I said one of the things I was going to compare was whether we had more jobs under Trump than we did previously. And I was pretty confident that we would not be able to do that. That's, even with the massive Keynesian stimulus of the tax cuts and the increased spending, you just can't do it. Unemployment rates. The unemployment rate bounced back up slightly from 3.6 to 3.7%. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't bounce up a little bit more, just because the labor force hasn't grown yet this year. I mean, it did grow in June, but overall it has not grown. We lost a lot of people from the labor force. And the labor force is going to, this is a household survey, so there's a lot of volatility to it, but it's going to tend to trend up probably between 500,000 and 1.5 million people per year. The U6 is the rate which includes the people who have part-time jobs that want full-time jobs, and people that haven't looked for a job in the last month, but have looked for a job in the last 12 months. And so they are considered in the labor force for purposes of the U6. And so that's always been a slightly higher number. It's come down quite a bit. The lowest we've ever seen it was 6.8% around 2000. So we're darn close to that right now. This is labor force participation among the 25 to 54, the prime working age people. And this is where, even among the prime working age people, we've got almost 18% of people, those age groups, I was going to say us, but I'm well out of that group, that aren't currently working and aren't looking for work. So, how many more of those people might get coaxed in? How many more of the group over 54, the 55 and older group, might get coaxed in? How many of the people that are reaching retirement age don't have enough saved that are going to continue to want to work? And that will, provide a source of people to fill those jobs. Inflation, The blue line is the volatile, which includes food and energy. The red line excludes food and energy. Inflation down a little bit, 1.6% over the last 12 months. And, you know, but that is, we'll see where that goes going forward, because a lot of that's dependent upon gas prices. Wage growth, nominal has crept up under Trump. Real wage growth after inflation was down until this year. And so that's why if you look at real wage growth for down in the bottom right corner, real wage growth for 2015 and 2016 was higher than in 2017, 2018. When we look at, you know, the 12 months 2019, we're back up to at least a decent number. Certain things like tuition, college tuition, and healthcare are rising at faster than the overall inflation. Certain things like food, cars, clothing. I saw a study recently about family budgets going back to the turn of the 20th century. Clothing used to be a big part of the family budgets. It doesn't even show up here. So certain things, you know, are going faster, certain things are going slower than the overall inflation rate. Stock markets, having a good 6 months. And for any of us that have retirement accounts or stocks otherwise, that's a good thing. And this is just compares the cumulative gain through 632 days under Trump and Obama. And it was higher under Obama, although we had the drop in his early part of his presidency. It rebounded. The budget deficit. Now that's something that's going up under Trump. Outlays at 20.3% of GDP is not that out of line, and it's down a bit versus some of the big years. The highest we ever got revenues was, I think, 20% of GDP back in 2000. They had reached that level and were going up before the Bush tax cuts. And then revenues crashed throughout the 2000s, and because we extended a lot of the Bush tax cuts, we've not gotten revenues back up to where they were, 20 years ago. Obviously, we had very few surpluses. Fiscal year 69, Lyndon Johnson's last fiscal year was a surplus year. And then the end of the Clinton years were surplus years. Big deficits during recessions. And even though we're not in recessions, and as somebody said, we're darn close to full employment, we've got big deficits now and projected into the future, primarily due to senior citizens, retirees, Social Security, Medicare, and senior citizen Medicaid, which is mostly nursing homes. Once people have used up their assets. And so that's going to continue to drive federal spending for the next few decades. In nominal dollars, not even adjusted for inflation, we basically spent the same in fiscal year 2009 and fiscal year 2014. We actually had 3 years where we had an actual cut in spending from one year to the next in nominal dollars. We actually spent less money. Those were fiscal year 2010, 2012, and 2013. And the last time that had happened was fiscal year 1965. So this is not a frequent occurrence. The chart generally goes up, and it's definitely going up under the Trump years. Mandatory expenses like Social Security, Medicare are going up. Discretionary spending going down. Interest is kept relatively neutral at about 3% of GDP from the mid-'80s till today. It went a little lower in the middle 2000s. And this is where we're talking about what's been added to the deficit by policies that have been passed since Trump took office. The tax cuts, as well as the spending increases for defense and non-defense spending that have been authorized. Debt to GDP ratio is going to be higher as a result of the policies that have been incorporated under Trump. Laffer curve. Shall we? Well, the Laffer curve actually goes back to some, I don't know, 14th century Muslim economist. And Laffer actually credits that he did not originate. But the theory is that as you go from a 0% tax rate to a 100% tax rate, tax revenues will go up, and at some point the tax rate gets so high that the revenues will go down. So at 100% tax rate, people generally are not going to report taxable income because any income they report is going to be confiscated. A lot of people draw this graph with this high point at 50% tax rate. The economists who put this together, I think this is The Economist magazine, say it's slightly above 75% here in the US, but that's a combined federal and state tax rate, because you say we're currently just under 50, and our top federal rate is not 50.
So
Yeah.
they're actually arguing that the government would get its maximum revenue if it taxed everyone at an average of 76%. Is that what you're saying?
Not an average. This is a top marginal rate. And again, not the federal government, as I just said, because states have got 10% rates. So they're saying that something in the 60 to 65 range would probably maximize federal tax receipts.
So is there a different curve for every economic group, for every class? If I'm in the top 10%, I got one curve. If I'm in the bottom 10, I got a different one.
The top marginal rate only affects the people in the top classes.
I understand that, but the idea here must be similar. I mean, if you want to extract the maximum tax revenue out of the poor people, if that's the way the government's implying, there's going to be a similar curve for that, is there not?
Someone could create one. No one, I think, is thinking along those lines.
No one's been crass enough.
And honestly, I don't think anybody's really saying, yes, let's go ahead and maximize tax revenue by raising the top rate to 65%. Although some folks on the left want it back to 90%. So, but this is saying if you go back to a top federal rate of 90%, you're going to be on the declining part of the curve, which is one reason why it's not a good reason to do that. Yeah.
Take 1 minute, just take me through the graph and then explain why the top marginal rate is an indicator of anything. I'm missing it.
Well, the idea is that at the top marginal rate, most of us pay income, our income taxes at various rates. We pay, Mark would be well, you know, let's say 10% on the first X dollars and 20% on the next dollars up to, you know, the top rate right now is 35% plus, you know, some additional amounts, I think. Although I don't know, I'm not really sure what after the Tax Act of 2007, where the top rates ended up. But, and so that says that we're, at this point on the curve, with the, actually what it's saying is, with the state taxes added in, we're just under a top marginal rate of 50% for the people that are making the top incomes.
Which gives you, what's the 100?
The 100 is the current level of tax receipts.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's obviously, it's 100 in each of these countries, and it's just their current level, whatever that is. And so what this is saying is, we could get maybe 20 to 25% more if we raise the federal rate another 25%.
Without identifying what the incidence of that tax is.
Pardon?
It's on the total tax, oh, it's top marginal personal tax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
And, you know, I'm not really sure. I'd probably put maximum as opposed to optimal. Because optimal, it gets into a whole different discussion. Do we really want to maximize? But that's, but the idea is that the Laffer curve's real, but we are definitely, and have been since, certainly since we dropped the top rate, the top federal rate from 70% to 50% in the early 1980s. We've been on this side of the curve, so that if tax cuts were going to lead to a loss in tax revenues, and tax rate increases lead to an increase in tax revenues. What this would argue is that when we cut from the 90% to the 70% back in the 60s, we were probably moving up this part of the curve, and we were probably right around here when we moved from the 70%, because the 70% federal would have been a total rate of probably 80% at that point.
But isn't one of the factors how many people in each of the different tax rates? So I'm trying to figure out why the top marginal tax rate is an indicator, as opposed to where the median marginal income tax rate or something like that might not be.
Well, the idea is that at some point, I mean, and it's a different point for different people, at some point you have the tax rate becomes so high that people say, I don't need to work extra hard if the government's taking, you know, Y amount of my income. Yeah, and so, I mean, obviously here, if the government's taking 100% of your income above a certain amount, people are not going to be very incentivized to go out and work harder to make more money if all of it's going to the government.
But that's also saying we can get 25% more revenue. Do you think that means 25% more revenue from overall, or 25% more revenue from a particular group?
from the top marginal.
I interpreted that as the whole country.
No,
I think,
it says high income.
It does, but I haven't read his study, but I'm wondering if he's saying we could get 25% more revenue than we're getting now if we raise the top marginal rate to 76%. I'm not sure, I have to look at the study, but if that's true, that amount, that if our revenue for the whole country were to go up 25%, that would basically wipe out the deficit.
yeah.
It's 900 billion on 3.6 trillion of revenue. So it's essentially, that would eliminate the deficit if we went to that optimal rate, if that is assuming that's talking about the entire country and not just a particular group.
Yeah, is it just the marginal, or is it, yeah?
We'll get an answer for you. We'll look that up and we'll figure it out, because now that you guys are asking the question, it's like, well, duh, I just didn't think about that.
Another sort of related question is, so what are we assuming for the state portion of that? I mean, this is the sum of them, but if we talk about the US government raising its rate, but is that, you know, we want the combined to be, it looks like, I'm roughly guessing, is that 77%? The maximum?
Something slightly over 75, yeah.
Yeah, so let's say it's 77. Well, each state has got a different tax rate. We've got, unlike France, which presumably, I don't know, but I would guess that it doesn't matter where you live in France, the national tax is probably the same. And there's probably, I suppose there probably are some local taxes and property taxes or something, but it's not as bad as the United States, I would venture, with 50 states.
Again,
But it's an important idea. I would grant that.
I mean, I would think that that they appear to be using something around 10% for the top state rate here.
Right, and what we're not talking about is, there's a point to tax at 100%. Okay? You don't want them to collect that money as income, you want them to invest it. Okay? So there's reasons to tax at high rate. That 90% tax rate collected almost no money. Congratulations, it met the last curve. What did it do? It pushed a lot of companies into investing. Because why would you create income?
Well, what even the 70% rate was doing was putting a lot of things into non-productive tax shelters.
Yeah.
Put a lot of money into non-productive tax shelters. I'm guessing the 90% rate did that in spades.
There are ways that can be fixed too.
Yeah.
There are rich people bribing politicians to not have it fixed.
And they're doing an excellent job.
And David, you want to take over on healthcare?
Sure, why not?
Okay. And actually, while he's walking up here, since I think we're going to have time, what other topics would you guys like to see covered today? And think about that, and we'll ask you again in a little bit. And obviously, always feel free to ask questions.
Okay, so healthcare, number of people with coverage. Obviously, the Affordable Care Act cut the uninsured rate down dramatically. About 20 million more people got coverage. That's at risk now. As you know, there's a lawsuit going through the Supreme Court. Well, not the Supreme, it's going to the appeals court right now. There are some rumors that it actually, the original court that saw it, or that opined on it, gave it an unfavorable, it didn't help us. In other words, it's going the other way. It's helped us. The conservatives won that argument. They're looking at repealing it if you look at what the original court said. The second court is now looking at it, and the types of questions that those conservative justices on that, or conservative judges are asking, are indicating that it probably, they're going to also give us an unfavorable verdict, in which case it would be appealed to the Supreme Court. But Paul Krugman did an interesting article on that. He said that if the mandate penalty were $1, that according to the case that's being made, the conservative argument would break, would fall. Meaning the fact that the tax amount is 0, is allowing that argument to prevail. And the conservative justices are saying, fine. If it was $1, their argument would fall apart. It's complicated. But if you look at Paul Krugman, if you look at what is written on this, he explains it in a very nice way. Basically, and Carl, you're going to have to help me here, if the Affordable Care Act, originally, they treated this as a taxing element, meaning that if the mandate for it is like a tax, okay? And the justices of the Supreme Court said, that's okay, you can tax, that is a legitimate taxing power. What these guys are saying now is because the mandate has been removed, it is not a tax anymore. And not only does that say that the Obamacare is no longer constitutional, it's also saying that the rest of the law must fall as well. The entire act must be repealed. That made it through the first judge. Now the second group of judges, the appeals court, seems to be leaning in that same direction. And so when that happens, then it goes to the Supreme Court. But again, if that mandate were $1, it would be a legitimate exercise of taxing power and the law would be fine. So that's why a lot of scholars have looked at this and have said, this is ridiculous. It should never have made it past the first court. It's ridiculous that it's doing well in the second court, and we'll see what the Supreme Court does. But the difference between a $1 mandate and no penalty is enough to call the entire Affordable Care Act unconstitutional. But we'll see about that. We'll see what happens. But I'm not going to hold my breath in this Supreme Court. I mean, it's you never know what's going to happen. So far, the good news is that the number of uninsured kept falling until 2016. But 2017 was the first year the number of uninsured actually started going up again, which is Trump's first year. And then it went up again in 2018. So about 2 million more people are uninsured now than were at the end of the Obama administration. And so that's up about 7%. So when you're arguing with your friends about the joys of living in the Trump era, you got about 2 million more people uninsured, it's up by 7%. Now, the Kaiser Foundation does wonderful research on this stuff. If you ever need to find something out about healthcare, just type Kaiser when you're searching there.